Who will make the Seattle Seahawks practice squad to start the 2024 season? What is going on, everybody? Good morning. We have made it to Wednesday. We have made it to the other side of the first official Seattle Seahawks 53-man roster. We now know more or less what players we're going to be carrying into week one. There is still an opportunity for things to get shaken up a little bit. There's been some talk that the Seahawks might be looking to add an outside nose tackle and possibly move a guy from a different position off the team. There's an opportunity for them to go outside the previous team to add to the practice squad. Most of the time, practice squads are made up mostly of players that spent the summer and spent training camp in the preseason with that team. But there's probably going to be a couple outside additions. But we have a pretty decent idea of what the team is going to be. And that includes the practice squad. Because once you see the players that get released, you can reasonably conclude that a lot of them are going to be coming back to the practice squad because we still like them. We just didn't have room for them on the 53-man roster. So this video is going to be all about that practice squad. I'm going to try to project who the Seahawks might be trying to get back on the PS. So, a little bit of discussion on whether or not I think it's likely, a little bit of discussion on whether or not I think that it's reasonable, and understand that there's also going to be a couple of things here that we cannot possibly imagine right now. Like a guy like Quinton Bohanna, who was released by, I want to say, the Titans. That's a guy that the Seahawks may kick the tires on because we want a nose tackle, but really, really hard to project that out. Like, if I were to predict that, that would be like, there's a little too much that needs to happen before you get to that point. So understand that I know the whole practice squad is not going to be made up of former Seahawks. All right, so let's take a look at what I have here. I've written down a projected 16-man practice squad given the 53-man roster that we have. Also, remember, we have a few players that are starting the season on injured reserve. So, let's take a look here. Before we get into the list, I hope you like this video. If you do, please click the thumbs up button down below. Helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want daily Seahawks content. Click the bell for notifications every time a video goes live. Become a channel member, $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help support the channel. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go position by position here, starting on the offense, moving to the defense. Let's get some PSers. So I do still have PJ Walker as the practice squad quarterback because we don't really have anybody else. It wouldn't shock me if the team lets Walker go and finds another quarterback to be on the practice squad, but realistically, you're not going to do better than PJ Walker on your practice squad 95% of the time. Walker has an NFL arm, and he does have some wheels. I know he doesn't usually use them, but he does have them. So when you have a player like a PJ Walker, you look at him and you go, hey, this would be a good guy to use for practice before games where you play a mobile quarterback, a dual threat quarterback, because while he's not good, he can at least threaten the defense in the same way that a Jaden Daniels can, even though he chooses not to do it in game very much for probably personal reasons. A lot of quarterbacks are like that, if we're being honest. But, yeah, I do think it'll be PJ Walker. If it's somebody else, I won't be surprised. It doesn't really matter that much, but most practice squad quarterbacks tend to be super noodle arms. PJ Walker's not. He at least can throw the ball down the field. It's just not a very good ball. So I still think he holds. Running back, this is kind of the big one. This is the important one. If we don't get George Holani back on the practice squad, a lot of people, including myself, are going to be really bummed out. And we'll be kind of scratching our heads a little bit because at that point, you're probably looking at Kobe Lewis as the practice squad running back. And, I mean, it wasn't all his fault, but we didn't really see anything good from him in the preseason. And, I mean, Kobe Lewis, that kind of a running back is completely replacement level. You can go out there at any time during an NFL season and find 100 guys that are about as good as Kobe Lewis. George Holani seemed like he was a little bit above that. Not by a lot, but by a little. So if George Holani doesn't make his way back to our practice squad, that would be a disappointment. I think that's probably the one that most people are hanging on here, hoping that he finds his way back. So that would be the running back for now. That's clearly the plan. If Holani gets scooped, then you probably do default back to a guy like a Kobe Lewis just because he's familiar with the offense now. Wide receiver, I decided to go with 3 of them because I had an extra spot to play with, and I decided to give it to another receiver. Aesop Winston Jr.'s receiver 1. I think that one's very obvious. He had a really good camp and a really good preseason. We're hoping we can keep him. Cody White, another guy who had a good camp and a good preseason. I think we're hoping that he doesn't get scooped. And then my third guy would be Hayden Hatton. I know he didn't really do much this offseason, but he's a good receiver, talented, real upside here, and I think that we would like to keep him around for at least one offseason if we can keep him. So I think that Winston and White are in real danger of getting picked up, and if they are, then I'm not 100% sure if we're going to carry more receivers, because I don't know if anybody else is really interesting enough to keep around. Maybe you'll be able to keep Eskridge on the practice squad, but I don't think so. That guy is talented. Somebody's gonna bite into that. Somebody's gonna take that and say, hey, I know all the problems, but he's got a dynamic open field skill set. He's got speed in the open field. We're going to make this work. So if White or Winston get scooped, I'm not 100% sure which direction we go then, but there's probably going to be a couple receivers out there that you could just pick up from other teams to put on your practice squad when the dust clears. So not really a super stressful thing, but Winston and White are good. Tight end, because of the way things shook out, I do have Tyler Mabry here. I wasn't planning on it, but then Jack Westover got hurt, and he's been released with an injured designation, which I think means that if we get to keep him, he'll revert right to IR. And I don't know if he'll be back this season or not. I don't know what the injury is exactly. I don't know how bad it is. So either way, Westover is going to start the season on IR and may stay there the whole year. So that being the case, Fant, Brown, Barner, and Russell are on the active roster. So Mabry becomes your practice squatter. Now, to be perfectly honest, I think that by the time everything shakes out, I'm sorry, not Brian Russell, Brady Russell. Brian Russell is a blast from the past for some of you slightly older Seahawks fans. Brady Russell, I think, will revert to the practice squad at some point. So maybe it'll happen in the next couple weeks. Maybe it'll happen after a couple games. I think we eventually go Fant, Brown, Barner, and then Russell is your practice squad tight end, and Mabry's off the team. But with the way things are laid out right now, I do think that Mabry probably makes it for the short term. All right, offensive line, I really only have 2 because we kept Gerald, we kept Forsyth, we kept Sundle, and I think that Sundle is kind of looked at as an extension of the practice squad, who we just decided to keep on the active roster for now. Wouldn't shock me if he ended up on the practice squad at some point this season. I think we just want a little bit of Connor Williams insurance. Again, I'm a little bit confused by the Sundle thing, but I do have Garrett Greenfield, one of my favorite Seahawks UDFAs this year, making the practice squad. And I do have McClendon Curtis because we like his flexibility on the practice squad as a guard. There are a couple other guys that could potentially latch on here. A guy like Ilm Manning, I guess, could come back on the practice squad here. But when you're carrying 11 offensive linemen on the active roster, I don't think you can carry more than 2 offensive linemen on the practice squad unless you're willing to really sacrifice at other positions, and I don't think we need to do that. So Greenfield and Curtis are my 2 offensive linemen. All right, now we're going to roll on down to the defense here, starting with that defensive line. And because Miles Adams starts the season on the 53-man because of the Cam Young injury mostly, I think that instead of Adams on the practice squad, you have Keon Bars on the practice squad. Of the defensive linemen who played for us in the preseason, Bars, Levelston, and Kendricks, I think we like Bars the most. I'm not super confident about that, but I think Bars gives me the best feeling of someone who could actually maybe become an NFL player at some point. So I'm going to say Bars is our one defensive lineman on the practice squad. And that guy might get pushed out if Cam Young comes back and Adams reverts to the practice squad at some point. We'll see. There is the consideration that if a player's on the roster for week 1, their salary becomes guaranteed for the year. So we may not be able to do that if Adams does actually start the season playing, but it's a consideration for the moment. Linebacker is really tough. Well, outside linebacker is not tough. Nelson Caesar, he's Caesar. People keep getting on me because I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I don't know if it's Caesar or Caesar. I guess I'll go with Caesar, but Nelson Caesar and Jamie Sheriff are your outside linebackers, your edge rushers. That's pretty easy, I think. I imagine that we're really going to want to keep both. Inside linebackers, weird. Right now I have John Radigan and Patrick O'Connell, but I feel like Radigan's going to come back and be on the 53-man instead of Drake Thomas, and then maybe Drake Thomas falls to the practice squad, or maybe Michael Barrett is on the practice squad and Drake Thomas just gets cut, or maybe Drake Thomas replaces Patrick O'Connell. I'm really confused here because the team did something unorthodox with Radigan and Barrett. We traded for Barrett. We must like him that much, but we didn't like him enough to actually put him on the 53-man, so now I don't know. So right now, as placeholders, I have Radigan and O'Connell. I think O'Connell had a really nice preseason, and Radigan's shown that he's another year removed from that big injury he had and looks a lot better. But I just feel like Radigan's going to end up as the 4th linebacker, and either we're going to carry 5 linebackers somehow, or the practice squad is going to be O'Connell and Barrett, because that's the guy we actually traded for. But where does that leave Drake Thomas, who's the guy who is temporarily on the 53-man? I'm confused, but I tried to break that down the best that I could. So I don't know anymore, though. The way in which the Seahawks handle the inside linebacker position with the cutdowns is confusing. Okay, cornerback, I got 2 cornerbacks making the practice squad, and that does not include Artie Burns. If we bring Artie Burns back, I don't think it'll be on the practice squad anymore. I think we will bring him back to put on the active roster and possibly get rid of a tight end or an offensive lineman in order to make room for him. So I don't think it'll be Artie Burns on the practice squad. I think a veteran like him probably wouldn't want to go to the practice squad. So I have Carlton Johnson, UDFA, that had a nice offseason with us. And then DJ James. I think we are going to try to get him on the PS because we liked him enough to draft him. Couldn't justify leaving him on the roster for now, but I think there will be an effort to get him on there. If DJ James can't get there, then there are a couple of other cornerbacks we could maybe scoot in there. But I have a feeling that it's not going to be that hard to get him there. And safety, I have 1, Ty Okada. Jarek Reed starting the season on IR, by the way. I think Okada is prioritized over Blair because I feel like he just had a little bit better of a preseason and there's a little bit more upside there, whereas Blair it kind of feels like Blair just is what he is. Very limited player, probably doesn't fit in with what McDonald is trying to do. So I would guess that Okada gets the nod before Blair. And that's 16 spots. That's all 16. So we went ahead and filled it in nicely. That is, I believe, 8 players to each side of the ball, offense and defense. So that's what I think it's going to shake out to be as of right now. Realistically, a couple of these guys are going to go to make room for guys that we like from other teams. Like you might see Hayden Hatton go and get replaced by a nose tackle, like a true nose tackle. Maybe we swap out PJ Walker for a different quarterback, but I think this is the template. I think that this is the template for right now. This is what we would like to see, and we're just going to wait for things to shake things up a little bit to push it in a different direction. So let me know how you feel about it. Let me know if anything else stands out to you as somebody you really don't want to lose. Some people really liked Levelston. Some people really liked Mario Kendricks. I imagine there's going to be a couple offensive linemen that people would prefer to keep over Greenfield or Curtis. So sound off. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. More videos coming later. Go Hawks. Practice squad building starts in, I think, 4 hours. So pretty soon here, we're going to start getting an idea of who's going to make the team, even if we don't have all the information for maybe a few days. All right, go Hawks.